He was a Democrat. He won a seat in the state legislature that had not been held by a Democrat in 16 years. Then a seat in Congress came up in his part of the state. He won that race. He went to Washington as a brand new congressman in his first term ever. He cast a vote for the assault weapons ban. That vote cost him his seat in Congress. He was out at the end of just one term. He told Rolling Stone recently about that, quote, "It was the right vote then. It's the right vote now. I knew it was going to be lights out, but I vote on conviction, so I did." That assault weapons ban vote cost him his seat. He went home. He and his wife and their 3 boys moved to a different part of the state. A few years later, he decided it was time to run again, this time against a Republican incumbent congressman. That district was currently held by a Republican. It had only been represented by a Democrat once in the previous 46 years. But he beat that Republican, went back to D.C. This time he stayed for a dozen years. And when he made national news in Congress over that dozen years, it was usually because he was sticking his jaw out and planting his feet and confronting someone from either party or special interests or someone just not following through.
Nationwide, police departments complain that the higher level of vigilance is draining their budgets, with big bills for overtime and training and equipping specialized counter-terror units. They want $3.5 billion bottled up in Congress.
We appreciate the administration raising the threat level to orange, but we need to see some green.
On Capitol Hill today, oil company executives were under fire for failing to invest more in alternative fuels while earning a record $123 billion in profits last year. Democrats are threatening to cut off $18 billion in tax breaks passed by a Republican Congress.
If you were going to give awards for taxpayer abuses, this would win the Heisman and the Oscar and the Nobel Prize.
You know who benefits from the estate tax? The top 0.3%. 99.7% of families do not benefit 1 nickel.
Today, the president held his ground, telling Democrats if they don't go along, the unemployed and middle-class families suffer.
Americans would see it in smaller paychecks. That would have the effect of fewer jobs.
But House Democrats demand new negotiations.
We would like to find a bipartisan way forward, but our caucus will not submit to hostage-taking, and we will not submit to this deal.
That last fight there was over a provision to cut the estate tax on the wealthiest people in the country. And incidentally, as you saw, that one was a fight with the president of his own party. And now, I think because he's a 2-term governor, and governors by definition have to prioritize governing, so they're always seen as more practical than any similarly situated politician who's not a governor, now his run for the presidency is being characterized by some as the start of the arrival of the moderates into the Democratic presidential field. And, you know, honestly, at this point, call any of these candidates anything you want to. Just make sure you spell their name right. Right? But Jay Inslee, I-N-S-L-E-E, Jay Inslee, has always been a progressive in the Democratic Party. He voted against the Iraq War. He voted against the bank bailout. He voted against the repeal of Glass-Steagall, which set the deregulatory dominoes falling that caused the Wall Street crash in the first place. As governor, his state was the first state in the country to sue Trump over the Muslim ban. He instituted a moratorium on the death penalty. The top court in his state followed that up by abolishing the death penalty in his state. He signed a statewide guaranteed paid family leave plan. You get 12 weeks paid time for having a kid or for a serious medical issue. He signed a statewide equal pay law for women and men to get equal pay for equal work. He signed the first state net neutrality law. He's proposed a statewide version of the public option for health insurance. The public option, you remember, got traded away at the national level when Obamacare passed, but now they're going to do it in his state. Public option for health insurance that everybody can buy into. He's proposed statewide pardons for marijuana-related misdemeanor convictions. His state's minimum wage is $12 an hour. It'll be $13.50 an hour by this time next year. In the state's biggest city, in the state's biggest airport, the minimum wage is at $16 an hour. Actually, a little bit above that at the airport. And the state has one of the highest rates of job growth in the country. And with that kind of a record, you might build a progressive presidential campaign around any of those things or all of them. But he has decided instead to run on one issue that he has been working on all along.
We have have got to stop global warming. Everyone in this country knows climate is changing. Reduce carbon pollution. New energy future. Climate change. Climate change. We should be dealing with climate change. Climate change. Climate change. We need to defeat climate change. That's what I believe. We're the first generation to feel the sting of climate change, and we're the last that can do something about it. We went to the moon and created technologies that have changed the world. Our country's next mission must be to rise up to the most urgent challenge of our time, defeating climate change.
People usually throw the phrase one-issue candidate around like it's an insult, like it's some sort of epithet. Oh, you're just a one-issue candidate. Washington Governor Jay Inslee is running with that himself. And he's running with it now. It's also how he's been governing. He blocked construction of a huge terminal on the Columbia River to export coal to Asia. He threw up roadblocks to stop a huge oil train facility that was going to be built at the Port of Vancouver. He signed a tax on pipelines, putting pipeline operators on the hook for funding oil spill response. He was a key co-sponsor on the last big climate legislation that passed anything in Washington. It was the cap-and-trade bill that passed the House in 2009 but then died in the Senate. Years before that, he was sponsoring comprehensive legislation to cap emissions, switch us from fossil fuels to renewables, and prioritize making a gazillion new jobs in those new energy sectors along the way. It was, in some ways, the precursor to the Green New Deal that so many Democrats are endorsing now. He was just doing it 15 years ago, waiting for the rest of the country to catch up. Joining us now for the interview is Jay Inslee, governor of Washington and a candidate for president in the Democratic primary. Governor, it's nice to see you.
Thanks for having me on. I kind of enjoy that saga. I'd like to listen to it.
This is your life.
Thank you very much.
Well, I know that you are running your campaign about climate change, and I want to talk to you about that. But let me ask you sort of the counterpoint right off the bat. One of the things that you said in interviews when talking about that cap-and-trade bill, the last thing that ever passed Washington on climate change in 2009, was that was essentially an opportunity cost problem. The Democrats under President Obama decided they wanted to do health care. That didn't even leave enough in the tank, as it were, to get cap and trade done. If you run on climate change, what are you most worried that you are leaving out? You are trying to run as a single-issue candidate. What do you most regret thinking isn't going to be on your agenda because you're going to run as this one-issue guy?
Well, fortunately, we don't have to do that because what I've demonstrated in my state that we can advance a climate action agenda while doing all these other things. First, net neutrality, best paid family leave. We got rid of the death penalty. I'm pardoning people, and we've legalized marijuana. Great transportation. We took on Trump on the Muslim ban. So we were able to do those things. But the experience that we've had in Congress and my experience as a governor, look, to govern is to choose. And when you're a governor, you learn to set priorities. And what I've learned is that this is such an enormous lift. We have to make it a commitment that we're going to use our political capital first and foremost on defeating climate change and building a new clean energy economy. And I am committed to that. And I'm the only candidate who is committed to that and has said so. Because it will not get done unless we do have presidential leadership to make it that type of priority. So it needs to be first. We have to put our capital, political capital into it, in our intellectual power, and everything we have. Because, listen, this is not just a single issue. It's not just about the economy. It is the economy. Our economy is getting ravaged by climate change right now. Our forest products industry is burning down. We're losing tourist dollars because of floods. Houston's flooded. Miami Beach, we have to invest money in raising the roads instead of our schools. So this is an economic issue. It is a health issue. The asthma our kids are having is just traumatic for families. If you've ever heard a kid wheezing, you know climate change is a health issue. It's a national security issue. You talk about national security and do a great job, and we all appreciate it. But it's going to get a lot worse if we have mass migrations due to desertification, creating political stability around the world. And you know who agrees with me on that are our generals and admirals in the Pentagon. So it really is an all-encompassing issue, and we cannot solve our other problems unless we do to fight climate change. So I do believe it's all-encompassing, and this is the right priority.
I know that you have made this a priority before it was cool, before people were talking about it for a long time, and you've worked on it both in the legislature and Congress and as governor. And I think now we're at a point where anybody who's going to vote in the Democratic primary for president will tell you that climate change matters to them.
Right.
They will tell you that it's a priority for them and they want a candidate and a nominee who's going to be good on that issue. The other thing that they want more than that, if they're voting in the Democratic primary this year, is to beat President Trump. And I think a big part of the narrative that Americans have told each other and told ourselves about how Trump won in 2016 is that he won the coal states, that he won states that Democrat used to win, and he won them basically by going in and saying, I'm going to revive the coal industry. And so what happens in Pennsylvania and Ohio and other states like that, West Virginia even, where the president made that his point of attack?
Well, what I have shown is we can win Wisconsin, Michigan, Minnesota, Illinois, and Kansas because we won it this year. I was chairman of the Democratic Governors Association, and I worked with our candidates to fashion an economic development message that will create jobs for people in all kinds of industries, including manufacturing industries, in part around clean energy jobs. And we flipped 5 seats right down the heartland of the Midwest. Don't say we can't win in the Midwest. We won in the Midwest big time with my governors who I was associated with because we came up with smart messages. Not just the Midwest. We picked up 2 governor's seats in the Southwest where Michelle Lujan Grisham campaigned on top of a wind turbine. And Steve Sisolak is going to be building solar farms. So this is a message that can connect to the economic anxieties of people with whom we did not connect in 2016. Look, somebody was challenging me. Senator McCain's daughter was challenging me today on another show.
I've heard of that show.
And she said, well, how can you have economic growth? And I said, because we're going to build a General Motors Bolts. I've got a General Motors Bolt sitting in my driveway. It's built in, I think, Orion, Michigan. Iowa has wind turbines like crazy. Nevada's building solar farms. In my state, you can't turn over a rock without seeing clean energy jobs. And this is not just a hallucination. The clean energy jobs today are growing twice as fast as the average in the U.S. economy. Number 1 fastest growing job, solar installer. Number 2, wind turbine technician. So this is a perfect way to connect with those economic anxieties and win those states, which is critical to beating Donald Trump. Now, I think there's a deeper contrast with him, too. I really believe in contrasts. Look, he is a pessimist. He is a fearful person with moronic ideas that wind turbines will say you can never have a television set to work. What a bunch of baloney that is. We are the optimists. We are the can-do people. We don't fear the future, we build it. We don't fear challenge, we embrace it. We don't fear the world, we create new worlds. That's who we are as an American people. So I think that we are hewing to the deeper character that was alive when John F. Kennedy said we're going to the moon. And I believe America can respond, and they are responding. We've had contributors in the last day and a half from all 50 states. Proud to say we've raised our first $1 million. So apparently people out there share my passion for this subject in confidence.
We'll be right back with Governor Jay Inslee of Washington right after this. Stay with us. Who is running for the Democratic presidential nomination. Governor, thanks for sticking with us.
Thank you.
Let me ask you about your state vis-a-vis the Trump administration. I mentioned in the introduction today that you were the first state to sue over the Muslim ban. We got a question from a constituent of yours today because we advertised the fact that we were going to have you. Her name is Mary Laucus Johnson. And she asked us about the lawsuit from 16 states challenging the president over his national emergency for a border wall. Your state has not joined that. She said, curious why Washington did not join the lawsuit against Trump's national emergency declaration. Is that related to the governor's presidential bid?
No, we are going to sue the president, as we have on at least 16 occasions or 20 by now, and we've been very successful. And I'm glad that we were the first to shut down the Muslim ban. Bob Ferguson's been a great attorney general for us, and I'm proud to have been the first governor to fight against it. But in this case, we will sue him the moment that he purports to take $1 out of our state. But that yet has not. Standing. We want to have standing. We want to make sure we win. There's a concept in the law, you have to have standing to be able to bring the lawsuit. We want to make sure we win that. When we have standing, the moment he says he's going to take $1 out of this for his vanity bumper sticker project on the southern border, we will sue. The complaint's already been drafted. So, Mary, be confident. We will continue to be very aggressive protecting our rights.
One of the ways that Republicans tried to rally other Republicans to oppose the president on the national emergency declaration was by saying, you let him declare a national emergency, something like this, you're going to get some crazy Democrat in there someday who's going to declare a climate emergency. And that was supposed to be such a terrifying idea that it would rattle Republicans into abandoning the president on that. What's your reaction to that?
Well, first off, listen, there is no national emergency on the border There is a political emergency, which is Donald Trump is in trouble because of his multiple depredations, okay? It is a vanity project, and we have better things to spend those billions on. I got kids that need college education. We're trying to expand early child education. We got things to do with that money, number one. Number two, I do believe it's unlawful and unconstitutional, and it is very clear for this reason. Look, the president went to Congress and asked Congress for the money to build the wall. The Congress, on a bipartisan basis, both parties, his party and the Democrats, agreed we will not do that. That is a terrible idea. They rejected his request.
A President Inslee who went to Congress and said we need a moonshot for renewable energy. Congress said no. A President Inslee would not declare a national emergency.
Not under the current system that we have in place today. Not under our understanding of the law, because we believe that would be a violation of the separation of powers, and it would be a consistent refusal to honor the decision by Congress. This is not like we all of a sudden had an emergency and Congress hadn't had a chance to think about it. He went to Congress. Congress said no. Now, if the rules change, look, if the Supreme Court changes the rules, all of the presidents will have to follow whatever those rules are then. And we know that climate is an emergency. If you go to Paradise, California, as I did, a town of 25,000, and you walk through or drive through like I did at dark, it looks like a neutron bomb went off. It looks like an apocalypse, and 80-plus people died. We have a true national emergency. It is climate change. It demands an immediate response. But the best way to do it is to have Congress and the president pass legislation and get this job done. And I will be proposing very specific proposals on how to do that.
Governor Jay Inslee of Washington State, congratulations.
Thank you. Appreciate having me.
Your success thus far. Keep us surprised as this goes on.
We'll be around.
Thank you, sir. All right, we'll be right back. Stay with us.